Hello, my name is Don Tartaglione from the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center. And during this session, we're going to talk about the importance of a social media strategy, the reason why you should make one, and some of the steps to go about creating your own social media strategy. So let's begin. So why do you need a social media strategy in the first place? Many organizations use social media. Many news agencies use social media. Maybe not all of them have a social media strategy. But what's important is that a social media strategy provides direction to the reasons why you are using social media. Because with social media, there's so many things that you might want to accomplish. What a strategy does is it narrows down all of these initiatives and gives you a goal depending on which channel you are using, which social media channel, such as Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or Instagram, and for what audience you're trying to reach on all of those platforms. So the strategy really, it means to keep you focused during your social media efforts. It helps identify your target audience. The target audience on Facebook may be different than your target audience on Twitter. And it also shows you who's responsible. Social media is a important job. It's a job that takes time, and you need someone dedicated, maybe not fully to social media, but someone that can sacrifice a very large amount of their time to creating social media messages to make sure those messages are effective. It also sets a quota because you want to understand how often you should be using social media, how often you want to be posting on social media, and it helps create a sense of guidance in that way. So let's move on to creating the social media strategy. So on the next slide, we have the basic elements of the social media strategy, which is your target audience such as who you're trying to reach with social media, your channel, so as I said before, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and your objective, what you want people to do with the content that you give them, how you want them to react, and also administration, who's will be using the social media, and the posting frequency, how often you make posts to social media. So let's get into that. So first of all, we have your target audience. And target audience is the most important part of the social media strategy. And that is because your target audience is your guiding principle to social media. It lets you know who exactly you're trying to target because these people can differ in different circumstances. For example, if you want to start a program to target people in very rural areas, social media might not be the best way. Community radio might be the best way to target those individuals at the community level. So first, you want to identify your target audience by looking at where you're going to be working and identifying which people are already using social media. After you identify and do a little bit of research to see who is using social media, you can start to see which channel they are on. After you do this, you could begin to work backwards. So you've identified your target audience, and then you could start to think about some of the best ways to reach them, whether it's by Facebook posts or Twitter posts. At the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center, we use Twitter to reach one audience, such as the media, because more media professionals tend to be on Twitter. While they're also on Facebook, they tend to be using Twitter a lot also. But for Facebook, we tend to focus the people who don't know too much about the work that we do. And that's because there is a wider audience on Facebook based on the research that we have done. So we encourage you to first, before even going beyond the first step of a social media strategy, is research the people you are trying to target and find out where they are on social media, which channels they use. Some popular channels now are Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So let's move on. So selecting your target audience, you can identify your audience by seeing where they are on social media. We can see how each group of social media differs depending on the platform. So let's move on to your message objective. Your message objective is how you want people to use the information you provide them on social media. There's two, you can call them subtypes of calls to action, two main ones at least, which is informing the audience and calls to action. When you're trying to inform someone on social media, you can share such things as best practices if you're doing this for disaster risk management related purposes. You can share good practices with them on what are the best things to do during a flood, for example, what to do in case of an earthquake. And it's important when you share these types of messages that you make sure that they are very up to date, and a professional in this field has helped you create these messages. That's because when you have established yourself as a trusted source on social media, people tend to listen and remember some of the lessons that you are trying to share. So you don't want to misguide people and maybe give them half the amount of information that they need. You want to make sure you establish yourself as a trusted source of social media, and you want to make sure you provide them with information that they will find useful. So moving on, some calls to action. These are social media posts that ask for donations, maybe after a very large earthquake or very large disaster in some way. Again, before you make any of these social media posts, you have to make sure you have some type of established way to connect these donations. But what's actually even better, if you don't have these systems set up already, you can partner up with a larger organization using social media and advertise them as being a trusted source of information and a trusted source where you could also provide donations if other users would like to. Another call to action is a way is to ask people to volunteer. Maybe if your organization is holding a type of event where they want people to come out and volunteer for the day, social media can be used for those purposes as well. And also calls to action could be asking for people to share information. Maybe you need more information from a certain area. Maybe it's a disaster type situation that is going on. And during that situation, you need specific information from a place. So you will post some social media messages asking for people to share information on social media with you in order for you to get a better understanding of what's going on at that time and in that specific place. So this goes into the listening aspect of social media, which is very important and very useful. And what this action does, what this consistent action does on social media is it creates this two-way communication where you're not only informing your audience, but you're also listening to them. That's why the overall objective and what you're doing is very important, because it either shares best practices or maybe you're requesting information from your audience. And this type of media, social media, is the only way that you can, it's the only media where you could really create or most easily create this two-way communication with your users. And this is something that should be taken advantage of because there's a lot of positive benefits that come with this good practice. So let's move on to the next element of the social media strategy. So who will be in charge of social media? Well, this is an interesting question, because what a lot of people tend to do now is they let someone who already has a list of responsibilities operate their social media page. And this is usually one person. Now, the problem with this is that people tend to get busy with their other responsibilities, and then social media ends up taking a back seat to your organization's overall working goal, whatever that may be. But the problem with this is that in order to build a social media following, you have to have consistent use of social media. When the person who is supposed to be operating social media gets busy, then they tend to stop posting. Maybe they're traveling, maybe they're on vacation, and this is similar to dead air on the radio where nothing is being said. So while all the social media is going on in the social media sphere or the realm of social media, your channel remains silent. While this isn't exactly something that will harm you at the early stages of social media, people are looking for you, or they're beginning to look for you as a information provider. So when you go silent like this, it does not help your reputation grow on social media. So for that reason, the person that is in charge of social media should have a good amount of time on their hands in order to use it. And there also should be a designated person in the background that knows how to use social media in case that person is either sick, on vacation, or maybe they found somewhere else that they'd like to work. There's already a backup person that could begin taking over their responsibilities. And this is very important just because it's always good to have a backup just in case maybe that person needs support, or the backup needs to step in for one reason or another. In going into crafting social media strategies and the time it takes to actually create a thought-invoking, interesting message on social media, it does take time, and that's why the people who are in charge of social media should have enough time in their schedule to devote at least 2 to 3 hours per day using social media. Now, this number can change based on your organization or wherever you work. Some people could spend all day using social media. Some people could spend just an hour using social media. But it's important for the person using social media to at least have a set amount of time per day where they can use it and monitor the social media channels. Because as your audience grows, they'll expect consistent content from you. And if there's ever a situation where they want to reach out for you, they do expect to have an answer quite quickly once they ask for that type of information. And this is all the more reason why the person using social media should have a very clear set of roles. They should also have a backup, as mentioned before. So let's move on to the next slide. Posting frequency. Now, a common misconception of social media is that you should post, 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 and post. It does not matter what information, as long as you are throwing information out there into the world of social media. As long as you're posting something, then it's okay. But in reality, in order to create a information base, so basically information that you're known for, and a growing following on social media, you should provide quality information to your followers. Now, as nice as it is to hear updates on the organization, such as Facebook posts talking about a new program, or updates on something that has happened in the past, while these things may be interesting to you, you should work to make them interesting to your consumer or to your audience, the person consuming the information that you are providing. Now, this means that you don't have to post all the time. You could have a few good posts about that new project, but make sure you message it in an interesting fashion. If it's about, let's say, developing coastal communities, you could talk about how often coastal communities in that area are affected by disasters every year. So this interesting fact is one that could pull in your audience, provides them with a useful bit of information, and you're also sharing what you're doing. And it won't hurt if you add some aspect of the message that asks for their opinion as well. In this way, you're creating that two-way communication. So while you don't have to post all the time, it's actually the quality of the post that's much more important. This also goes back to why creating interesting social media messages is a large part of the task, which is why the person using it should have a good amount of time dedicated to social media. So really, posting frequency is about quality versus quantity. So you want to take your time and make interesting posts that people will remember, and you'll find yourself creating a larger following on social media. Let's move on to the next slide. So now it's time for you to create your own social media strategy. So you could grab yourself a piece of paper and start to brainstorm who will be able to do these tasks and what type of information that you want to use on social media. It's encouraged that the social media strategy be kept as a working document that you could add to throughout the next sessions. And keep in mind that this social media strategy, the one that you're creating, it's not going to stay the same throughout your entire career of using social media. As your audience grows, as what you want to do with social media grows, your strategy will evolve with it. And this is very important to realize because social media being as dynamic as it is, it's always changing, and your role using social media will change as well. However, this is a nice outline just to get you started and to have a more structured way of using social media. So once again, as a quick wrap-up, we will go over the basic concepts of a social media strategy. The first one is your audience. You want to select your target audience and then work backward from there. Once your social media strategy's target audience has been selected, then you can move on to selecting your channel, or which will be the best social media channel to use, or which group of social media channels will be the best to use, depending on how you would like to use social media, and also your objectives. So what is the desired effect of the message conveyed to the target audience, and your administration, or simply whose job it will be to run social media, and maybe a backup person who can step in case the main person is not there for whatever reason. And then also your posting frequency, or how often you will be posting on social media. Again, the key here is quality over quantity. While you want your presence to be known on social media, you want to be sure that your presence is known for having quality content consistently. Thank you very much. My name is Don Tartaglione, and now we can move on to the next sessions. Thank you.